Well, Cheryl, can you explain to me about your struggle with this situation?
Sure. In 1990, I flew to Romania with my mom to adopt Lindsay, because when you adopt a baby from Romania, you might be gone an indefinite amount of time, at that time anyway, which could have been up to 2 or 3 months. So Steve couldn't get off work to go with us. So we flew over to Romania and we found Lindsay in an orphanage over there. And before we could leave Romania, we had to have her tested for HIV as a requirement by the U.S. government, because they weren't letting HIV people of any age in to the U.S. So we found a doctor there, and he tested her, and she was negative. So this was just before Christmas in 1990. We were just joyful and thinking, the holidays were going to be super special this year. And so we flew home, and just a few days after we were home, I took Lindy to her first doctor visit here, and the doctor recommended that she have a full battery of tests that they do for internationally adopted children. And HIV was one of the tests that they did. And so our doctor called one day, and he said, just shortly after we had those tests, and he said that you really should come into my office because we need to talk about the test. He said, he didn't say which one, and so we did go into his office, and he said that Lindsay tested positive for HIV.
How rock solid are the tests, being that in Romania the test was negative, and when you get to the United States the test was positive? Are those tests, those tests guaranteed to be 100%
No.
every time?
Well, we thought they were. I mean, and at the time they told us, oh, well, she was just in a latency period. That's why she didn't have the test positive in Romania, but she did over here because she had antibodies that just bloomed suddenly. I'm not sure what the explanation is because I'm not a scientist, but we should have thought about it differently, but we just believed everything they told us, and so we assumed she was positive. And our family, a pediatrician recommended that we take Lindsay to a specialist here in the Twin Cities. So we took her there to the pediatric infectious disease specialist at the Children's Hospital, and she did all the tests again, the Western blots, and she said, yes, Lindsay's positive, and I'll give you a prescription. And
Right
she
there
wrote
on
it
the
up
spot.
right then and there, and so we went to the pharmacy in the hospital, in the children's hospital and clinic there, and right on the pharmacy floor, we opened up that bottle and gave her her first dose because we thought we'd start saving her life right then and there.
And how old was she at that time?
She was only 3 months old.
3 months old.
Well, at first, she seemed to do okay with it, but when her growth didn't keep up with the growth chart, in a natural progression, they would up her dose, and her T cell counts were dropping too, and this was another thing the doctors were concerned with, was getting those T cell counts to go up. And her T cell counts would go up, but her weight just kind of kept going straight instead of going up. And so we went on like this for almost 2 years. And every 6 weeks we'd go to the doctor, and they would say the same thing, just keep up that medicine, just give her all the medicine that's prescribed. And after a while of that, toward the end of the 2-year time that she was on medication, my dad found an article in a magazine that he reads. It's a National Review, and he read an article in there that was written by Tom Bethel about Peter Duesberg, the same author, but Duesberg had not written a book at that time, but he had made a splash in the science industry or science magazines. And my dad read one of these articles, and Duesberg flat out said, HIV doesn't cause AIDS, and even more so, the drugs will kill you if you continue to take them, and your daughter would die of it, just like Kimberly Bergalis did. So we wrote to Peter Duesberg in October of 1992, and 10 days later, we received a thick packet of information in the mail and a handwritten letter that convinced us to take Lindsay off the AZT right then and there.
Wow. Now, based off of the Rethinking AIDS organization, is there are there any statistics out there of people who believe in the movement and believe in Rethinking AIDS who are not taking the drugs? Are there statistics on their health and their life expectancy, and is there any correlation between?
No, there's no statistics because they don't want to present those numbers to people. They don't research those numbers. They only want numbers that back what their agenda to push more drugs onto people sooner upon testing positive on a failed HIV test.
So really, the only way that Rethinking AIDS could take the onus of keeping those statistics are if people who are not taking drugs contacted Rethinking AIDS and provided that information.
Yes.
Is that something that Rethinking AIDS is trying to gather at this point?
Yes, there's a website already that was already started called livingwithouthivdrugs.com, and then we just started a new website locally. It's a global organization, but I started it locally here in Minneapolis called wearelivingproof.org. I met the Nagels because of their involvement with House of Numbers, which is a new documentary that's due to be released in January that portrays their story. And it's a very controversial new documentary that's winning awards in major film festivals all over the world. Best of Festival, Best Documentary. It's very, very highly contested by the Orthodox establishment that doesn't want the public to see it. And so we all went 2 weekends ago, and we went to the Rethinking AIDS conference in San Francisco. It was actually in Oakland, just outside of San Francisco, from November 6th to the 8th. And there was 170 dissidents in attendance. And there is a signed list of it's a growing list of over 2,600 professionals worldwide, doctors, scientists, and other professionals that are willing to take a stand against the HIV equals AIDS hypothesis. And the mainstream media would have you believe there's only a handful of people, but there's a signed list of 2,600 and growing. And each one of those people on that list have been contacted by the Orthodox directly and had their practices threatened, had their reputations threatened, that if they didn't have their name removed from the list.
Wow. Well, now that we're getting the message of Rethinking AIDS out into the public, how can people get involved?
Well, the best way is to go to one of the websites, wearelivingproof.org, and there's a wealth of information there to view. And there are chapters of Rethinking AIDS dissidents all across the nation and the world. So the best thing to do is to plug in with people and get to know them personally, and then just continue telling people that you just meet. You know, those people aren't nuts, those rethinkers. They're actually living people. There are actually living people who are still here and not taking their meds, living perfectly normal lives.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys are getting this message out. Well, how can people help out?
For wearelivingproof.org, we are in need of nonprofit. I'm going to be applying for nonprofit status and attempting to incorporate to provide protection for the organization and the people that are on the website. I have not been able to get that accomplished yet, so there's an alternative where I can go under another nonprofit's umbrella, but I haven't found an organization that, I haven't had enough time to petition enough organizations to get that done yet. But people can go on wearelivingproof.org and click on the donate tab and do a secure PayPal donation there.